Hello friends, Namaskar, this is Sanjay. In this video series, we will be talking about Vygotsky and his theories, and we will also be solving some questions from the previous question papers. This video series has 10 parts. In the first part, I will talk about the importance of Vygotsky in the CDP syllabus, and we will also discuss about the socio-cultural theory, the zone of proximal development, scaffolding, and the concept of constructivist classroom. We will be solving a total of 150 questions from the previous CTET question papers. In the first part, along with the introduction and the simplified theory explanation, we will solve 15 questions, and in each of the remaining parts, that is from part 2 to part 10, we will solve 15 questions per video. So in total, we will be solving 150 questions, which will cover the entire syllabus for Vygotsky and his concepts and theories. There are two versions of this video series. One is the English version, and if you are comfortable with Hindi explanations, then you can watch the Hindi version of this video series. So let's get started. Why is Vygotsky important in your preparation for the CTET Paper 1? Well, while I was preparing for this video, I was collating questions from all the previous question papers, and in some question papers, up to 5 questions were directly based on Vygotsky's theories and concepts, and there could be up to 7 indirect questions, which are again based on his theories or concepts. That is, if you are completely and thoroughly familiar with Vygotsky's theories and concepts, you can answer up to 12 questions out of 30 very easily. And if you look at Vygotsky's theories and concepts, they are very simple and they are very easy to understand and remember as well. Therefore, these 12 questions can be sure short questions, which you can answer easily, and your overall marks will increase. In addition, if you look at the National Education Policy, that is the NEP, you can see that the Constructivist school of theory has strongly influenced the NEP. In addition, Vygotsky's theories and concepts are also used in NEP to a certain extent. Therefore, even to answer NEP related questions, Vygotsky's theories and concepts are very useful. So that is why we should be very thorough with Vygotsky's theories and concepts in the CDP syllabus. When we look at the CDP syllabus for CTET Paper 1, there are 3 main types of learning theories that have been discussed. The first one is behaviorism, the next one is cognitivism, and the third one is constructivism. Behaviorism is a learning theory that is based on the concept of stimulus and response. When I was a kid, I had a dog at home which was conditioned in such a way that as soon as it sees a belt or a chain, it would automatically go and stand near the door. Right? So the stimulus was the belt or the chain that it would see, and the response was its action in going and standing near the door. So this theory of behaviorism says that even human beings can be conditioned in a similar way. Cognitivism is a theory which is based on the concept that human beings can receive different bits of information at different points in time, and they will relate the new information to the existing information that they already have in their brain and process it into knowledge. That is, if a child receives some new information in grade 4, then the child will connect it to the information that he has received in grade 3 and put these two pieces together and convert it into knowledge in his brain. And constructivism is a theory which says that human beings will actively construct knowledge in their brain. That is, they will receive information from various sources, they will process this information and play an active part in construction of knowledge in the brain, and not just passively receive information from outside. In the CDP syllabus, there are 2 main theorists who have been discussed in the context of constructivism. That is Lev Vygotsky and Jean Piaget. Now, Jean Piaget was known for his theory of cognitive constructivism, and Lev Vygotsky is known for his theory of social constructivism. So we will learn a little more about what is this social constructivism in the next few slides. So constructivism says that learners construct knowledge rather than just passively taking in information. So who was Lev Vygotsky? Well, Lev Vygotsky was a Soviet-Russian psychologist, and he was one of the most important proponents of the social constructivist school of learning. And if you look at his concepts and theories, they are based on 3 main concepts, that is society, culture, and language. So you have to remember these three words: society, culture and language, or social, culture and language, because a lot of questions can be answered using these three words as clues. And the key concepts that we will be discussing about Lev Vygotsky's theories are the zone of proximal development and scaffolding and the concept of more knowledgeable other. And we will also be talking about the various types of speech, that is social speech, private speech and silent inner speech. So in the next few slides we will discuss a lot more about these various concepts. Like I said, Lev Vygotsky's theories and concepts are based on three main components: social, cultural and language. To explain Lev Vygotsky's social constructivist theory in a very simple way, we can say that the child will receive a lot of information through social interactions. That is, when the child interacts with his or her family, peers, teachers and community members, then the child will receive a lot of information. And the child will also receive information through various cultural factors. For example, the religious beliefs or the customs and traditions that are followed by his or her family and community, and the moral values, the laws and rules of the country or the community that he or she is living in. So all these cultural factors and all these social interactions give a lot of information to the child, and the child will use these bits and pieces of information and actively construct knowledge in his or her brain. Now, how does the child receive the information through these social interactions and cultural factors? That is where language becomes the tool or the means of interaction with various members of the family, and also to understand these various cultural factors and get information from there. Therefore, these three concepts, that is social factors, cultural factors and language. So these three factors are very, very important in the construction of knowledge. So you have to remember these three words because a lot of questions can be answered using this very basic concept. The next concept that we need to understand is the zone of proximal development. So now this concept says that there are a few things that the student can do independently. That is, the student does not require any additional help or assistance or training. And there are some things or tasks that the student can do only with some assistance or with some training. And then there is a list of things that the student cannot do at this point in time. So that list of activities or tasks that the student can do on the basis of his or her existing knowledge, but will require some additional help or assistance. So these are the things that fall into the zone of proximal development. To explain it more simply, at this point in time, I know how to drive a car. Therefore, I don't need any assistance to drive a car. I can do this independently. If you give me a bus or a truck, I can drive a bus or truck because the basic principles are very similar to driving a car. However, I have never driven a bus or a truck before. So I will need some training or assistance from somebody who knows how to do it. So driving a bus or a truck is my zone of proximal development at this point in time because I can do it, but I will need some assistance or help. If you give me a plane, I don't even know how to start a plane. So that is beyond my capability at this point in time. Therefore, that falls into the list of tasks that I cannot do. Therefore, this is a very simple explanation of what is the zone of proximal development. If we look at how the zone of proximal development evolves over the lifetime of a person, when the person is a child, right, then there are very few activities that the child can do independently, and there are very few activities that the child can do even with some help. As the child grows and develops, then the number of activities that the child can do independently will also increase, and the number of activities that the child or the person can do with some help will also increase. And the number of activities that the child or the person cannot do will start shrinking. And when the child becomes an adult and a mature adult, then there are a large number of activities that the person can do independently, and there are a large number of activities that the child can do or the person can do with some help. And the number of activities that are beyond the capability of the person will have become very less. So if you look at it, the zone of proximal development also keeps growing throughout a person's life, just like the number of activities that the person can do independently. So this is the basic concept behind the zone of proximal development. The next important concept that we have to understand is scaffolding. So scaffolding is nothing but temporary support. For example, when a building is being constructed and concrete is being poured, then this concrete, as soon as it is poured, it is not strong enough to support its own weight. Therefore, a temporary support or a scaffolding is actually built so that it can support the concrete. And after a few days, when the concrete is strong enough and it can support its own weight, then this temporary scaffolding or the temporary support can be removed. So similarly, when the child's knowledge is not strong enough, then some help or temporary support is provided to the child or the learner. And when the child becomes expert enough to deal with the situation on his own, then this scaffolding can be removed. So what is the connection between scaffolding and the zone of proximal development? Well, as we discussed, there are some things that a student or a child can do independently. There are some things that the student or the child can do but will require some assistance or help. And then there are some things which the child cannot do. And the things that the student can do with some help or assistance fall into the zone of proximal development. Now, the assistance that you give for these activities or tasks is nothing but scaffolding. For example, driving a car is something that I can do independently. I don't need any assistance. If you give me a truck or a bus, then I can drive a truck or a bus, but I will need some guidance or assistance from an expert driver. Therefore, that temporary support or assistance or training that is being given to me by the expert driver till I become comfortable in driving a truck or a bus. So that temporary support is nothing but scaffolding. So now you know that scaffolding is nothing but the temporary support or the guidance or the assistance that is provided to children or the learners in such tasks which fall into the person's zone of proximal development. That is, those activities that the child or the learner can do but with a little bit of assistance. If you provide that assistance, then that is nothing but scaffolding. And those activities which the child can do with a little bit of support are in the zone of proximal development. So now, who can provide this scaffolding or support? It might be parents, it might be family members, it might be teachers, it might be friends, it might be community members. So anybody who is providing this temporary support or training or assistance or guidance to the student or the learner, right? So that temporary support is scaffolding. And for that person to be able to help the learner, that person should know more than the learner. So that person who is providing the scaffolding will be the more knowledgeable other, or the MKO. So in a classroom, the teacher is providing that support or that guidance to the student. Now the teacher is able to do that because the teacher knows more than the students. Therefore the teacher is the more knowledgeable others. In the example that I gave earlier, I know how to drive a car. I don't need any assistance. But if I need to drive a bus or a truck, then I will need some guidance or support from an experienced driver. Now that experienced driver knows more about driving a truck or a bus than me. So that person will be the more knowledgeable other in that context. The next important Vygotsky's concept that we have to understand is with regards to speech. Vygotsky said that there are three different types of speech. The first one is social speech. Then there is private speech, then there is silent inner speech. So social speech starts from the age of 2 onwards. This is the normal speech that we use to communicate with each other. And this will continue for the rest of the life. And then there is private speech. So private speech is nothing but an expression of the child's thoughts. So this starts from the 3rd year onwards. So the child will keep speaking to himself or herself when the child is doing something. So why is this speech? Right? This speech is for self-guidance or self-regulation of behavior. That is, the child is just speaking out his or her thoughts and giving himself or herself instructions on what to do. So this private speech, which is audible, right, which others can hear, but it is intended for the child's own self-guidance or self-regulation, that is private speech. And from the age of 7 onwards, this private speech becomes silent inner speech. That is, the private speech continues to exist. The child is still speaking to himself or herself, still expressing his or her own thoughts in the form of language, but the child becomes more self-conscious from the 7th year onwards. That is, the child is now thinking, if I speak loudly, what will the others around me think? Right? So the child continues to use private speech, but it becomes silent and inside his or her own mind. Therefore, that becomes silent inner speech. So, social speech is normal speech, that is audible and used for normal communication. Private speech is audible and is used usually between the ages of 3 to 7, and this is audible but it is not intended for anybody else. This is for the child's own self-regulation or self-guidance. And then silent inner speech is nothing but an evolution or a development of private speech, because from the age of 7 years onwards the child becomes more self-conscious and does not want others to probably hear his or her thoughts. So the private speech becomes silent and moves inside his or her head. So that is silent inner speech, and this is not audible. Who believed that cognitive development occurs in a socio-cultural context and evolves out of the child's social interactions? Like I said, Vygotsky's theories and concepts are based on 3 factors, that is social, cultural and language. Since you can see social and cultural here and social is repeated here, then you can easily identify that the correct answer has to be Vygotsky. Dash is likely to dash the student's achievement. This is an indirect question that can be answered using Vygotsky's concepts. So as we learnt earlier, Vygotsky says that social interactions are one of the major sources of information for the child or for the learner or for the student. So the social interactions can happen with the family, with the peers, with the friends, with the community members. Therefore, all these are nothing but social collaborations. And if the child has a lot of social collaboration or social interaction, then what happens? Then the student's achievements are enhanced or increased. Therefore, the correct answer here is option 3, that is social collaboration is likely to enhance the student's achievements. Dash plays an important role in Vygotskian Constructivism. As we discussed earlier, the 3 factors that play a very important role in Vygotskian Constructivist theory are society, that is social, then there is culture, then there is language. So if you look at all the options, language is directly given here. The other 2 options are not present. Therefore, the correct answer has to be language. So language plays a very important role in Vygotskian Constructivism. With an appropriate question and suggestion, the child's understanding can be extended far beyond the point where which she could have reached alone. Which construct does the above statement highlight? So what we are being told here is that the child is currently at this point where the child is capable of doing some things, and what you are doing is you are using some appropriate questions and suggestions. That is, you are actually supporting the child and providing a scaffolding so that she can do things beyond her current capability, and these are things which she can do only with some assistance and she cannot do it alone. Therefore, what you are doing is you are providing scaffolding. And what are these activities which she can do but not without support? So these are those activities which are there in the zone of proximal development. So this question or this statement can refer to 2 things. It can refer to the zone of proximal development, which is one of the options here. Therefore, this has to be the correct answer. And this can also refer to the scaffolding or the support that you are providing to the child for activities which are in the zone of proximal development. So scaffolding also can be a correct answer, but there is no scaffolding among the remaining options, so we can ignore it. A 5-year-old girl talks to herself while trying to fold a t-shirt. Which of the following statements is correct in the context of the behavior displayed by the child? So as soon as you see this question and you look at all the answer choices, you have to see that this is referring to a 5-year-old child, and a child between the ages of 4 to 7. If the child is talking to himself or herself and is actually giving instructions to himself or herself, then this is nothing but private speech. Right? Now, when you look at the options, which one has this private speech in it? Well, the second option has private speech mentioned in it. Right? Therefore, the second option, that is, Jean Piaget would explain this as egocentric speech, whereas Lev Vygotsky would explain this as a child's attempt to regulate her actions through private speech. Therefore, this has to be the correct answer. A mathematics teacher is using more skilled peers to support and guide other students. Which theoretical framework is she trying to apply in this class? So if you look at the information given in this question, first of all, there is a set of students who need some support or guidance to do some activities. So these students who need the support or guidance are in their zone of proximal development. And the more skilled peers, that is the peers who know more than the students who need the support and guidance. So these are nothing but the more knowledgeable others. And the support and guidance that is being given to these students is nothing but scaffolding. Therefore, these are all clues that the teacher is using Lev Vygotsky's theory of social constructivism in the classroom, and that is the correct answer. A student of your class faces problems in expressing views and often switches between the school mainstream language and the dialect spoken in his or her hometown. As a teacher, you must do which of the following? Now, here we are being told that there is a child in your classroom who is not comfortable or fully comfortable in the school mainstream language. It might be English, it might be Hindi, or it might be the language of the state where the school is located. And because the child is facing difficulty in communicating some of the words or some of the phrases, he keeps switching to the dialect spoken in his or her hometown. So this is the native language. As a teacher, what must you do? Now, even though this is not a direct question, this can be answered using Lev Vygotsky's theory. So Lev Vygotsky says that language is very, very important in the construction of knowledge, because language is used to receive information, to transmit information, and language is also used in the thought process. Therefore, even the national education policy says that children should be encouraged to speak in their native language, and as far as possible, children should be given instructions or knowledge in their native language, because at least in the initial years, they can absorb knowledge very well if they are taught in their mother tongue. Now, when you look at the answer choices, the first one says emphasize the purity of language usage. Now here the child is facing a difficulty. It's not out of choice, but out of the need to express himself or herself, he is switching over to the native language. Therefore, by emphasizing the purity of language usage, you are not going to help the child. Therefore, this is incorrect. Next one, recommend the child to a special school. Well, there is nothing wrong with the child. The child is just switching over to his or her native language. So why do you want to send the child to a special school? So this is also incorrect. The next one, introduced similar word meanings in the target language gradually. That is, if the child is facing difficulty in English and is switching over to his or her native language, then you can gradually start introducing meanings of the words that the child is facing difficulty in English, so that the child will gradually get used to English. Therefore, this is the most logically correct answer. And the last one is rebuke students for mixing languages. So if you rebuke or if you scold students, you're not going to achieve anything, because the child is not doing it out of fun. The child is doing it because he or she wants to communicate. Therefore, by scolding the students for mixing language, it's not going to help. Therefore, this is also incorrect. A teacher facilitates the students in teaching learning process through peer interaction and scaffolding. This teaching and learning process is based on which of the following? Now here you can see that there is peer interaction, that is social interaction, and there is scaffolding. So these are very big clues to help you identify that here the teaching and learning process is actually based on Lev Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory. As soon as you see the word scaffolding or peer interaction or social interaction, you should be able to identify this is based on Lev Vygotsky's theories and concepts. So that is the correct answer. A teacher gives a half-done example to a child while teaching a particular concept. According to Lev Vygotsky, which of the following strategies is the teacher using? Now here we are being told that there is a particular type of problem or a particular type of concept that the child is not fully aware of. So these are problems or concepts that the child can understand or solve with some support. Therefore, these problems are in the child's zone of proximal development. And the half-done examples, that is the partial support or the partial help that the teacher is giving, is nothing but scaffolding. Therefore, the correct answer here is scaffolding. A teacher in a progressive classroom should believe that which of the following? Now, if you look at all the options, you'll see that the third option says that learners bring a rich variety of experiences with them in the classroom. And this is correct answer to this question. Because this question may not be directly based on Lev Vygotsky's theories, but this can be answered completely by using his theories or concepts. Because what Lev Vygotsky says is that a lot of learning happens through social interactions, and here the interaction between the children is what should be encouraged, and children learn through a variety of sources. That is, they learn through social factors, they learn through cultural factors, and they learn through language. Therefore, in a classroom, there will be children from different backgrounds, and each of these children bring a variety of experiences based on their social, cultural, or linguistic backgrounds. Therefore, learners bring a rich variety of experiences with them in the classroom. That is, because of their social, cultural, and language differences. So, that is something that the teacher should believe in a progressive classroom, and that is the correct answer. A teacher should do what to her students for making intuitive guesses to answer a question. That is, in a classroom, if children are trying to answer a question by guessing the answer, then what should the teacher do? So, should she encourage the students? Absolutely yes. Because this is nothing but scaffolding. Because the teacher is allowing the children to try to solve the problem on their own. She is giving them the freedom to learn, and she is giving them the freedom to guess the answer, and if they make a mistake, the teacher should say, it's okay, it's not a problem, you are almost on the right track, but the answer should have been this. So what the teacher is doing is she is actually encouraging the students to try and solve the problem on their own, even if they have to guess the answer. And the children is therefore encouraging the students to learn on their own, to construct their own language. So this is nothing but a constructivist approach, and here the support that the teacher is giving in encouraging the students to make their own mistakes is nothing but scaffolding. Therefore, the correct answer is encourage, because the teacher should definitely not ignore, punish, or restrain the students if they are trying to guess the answer. A teacher wants to design the teaching and learning process in her classroom on Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism principles. Which of the following should she avoid? That is, we have to identify which of these options is against Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism principles. Now, the first one says designing teaching and learning experiences based on social context. Now, Lev Vygotsky gave a lot of emphasis on the fact that children learn through social interactions. Therefore, designing teaching learning experiences based on social context is social constructivism approach. Therefore, this cannot be the answer choice. Next one, closely observing the students' attempt at learning. By closely observing the students, the teacher can understand where the students need additional support or help. Therefore, this is something that the teacher should not avoid. Therefore, this also cannot be the answer choice. The third one, use of formalized standardized tests to assess learning. Now, this is something that is against the social constructivism approach, because children learn through a variety of information that they get from social factors, from cultural factors, and from language. So, if children are from different social backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and linguistic backgrounds, then the way that they construct knowledge might be different. So, by using the same formal standardized tests to assess all students, you might actually not be assessing them in a proper way. For example, if you ask children what is the breakfast that people should have, a child from a city might say, I will have pizza for breakfast. Whereas a child from a village might say, I will have roti for breakfast. Now, is pizza a correct answer or is roti a correct answer? So both answers are correct. So by using a formalized standardized test which has only one correct answer, you'll not be able to assess the students properly. Therefore, use of formal standard tests should be discouraged or avoided. Therefore, this is the answer. And the last one says providing scaffolding when needed. Now, scaffolding is part of Lev Vygotsky's theories and principles. Therefore, this cannot be avoided. A teacher wishes to help her students appreciate multiple views of a situation. She provides her students with multiple opportunities to debate this situation in different groups. According to Vygotsky's perspective, her students will do which of the following for various views and develop multiple perspectives in the situation on their own. So, if the teacher is giving an opportunity for students to interact with each other, that is to debate and discuss this in different groups, then what the teacher is doing is she is helping the students get inputs from various social interactions. And because students come from different cultural backgrounds and linguistic backgrounds. So they bring in their own different type of perspectives and viewpoints. So the children are absorbing all of these different viewpoints from their social interactions through various cultural aspects and through different language backgrounds. Therefore, the students are internalizing the various views. They are taking all this into themselves. And then they will develop multiple perspectives on the situation on their own. That is, once they receive all these little bits of information and once they internalize it, then they will process it and then they will construct knowledge out of it. That is, they will develop multiple perspectives on their own. That is, they will construct knowledge on their own using the inputs or the information that they receive from various sources. Aanav struggles with addition of 3-digit numbers on his own, but is able to do so with support from his teacher. Lev Vygotsky's theory highlights which of the following. So here we are being told that Aanav is struggling with 3-digit numbers. That is, he knows how to solve addition of 3-digit numbers, but he can do it only with the support of the teacher. That is, this addition of 3-digit numbers is in his zone of proximal development, and the support that the teacher is giving is nothing but scaffolding. Therefore, here when we look at the answer choices, zone of proximal development is given in the first option. So this is the addition of 3-digit numbers that the child can do with some support and with some guidance from the teacher, some temporary support and guidance. Therefore, the correct answer is zone of proximal development. According to whom, it is important to understand the social process and influence of the cultural context on the child's thinking. So now, as we have been discussing, whenever you see the words social and cultural and language together in a question, you should be able to identify that we are talking about Lev Vygotsky, because Lev Vygotsky emphasized on the importance of social inputs and social interactions and cultural context and cultural background and on language in the development of children and in the construction of knowledge. Therefore, the correct answer here is Lev Vygotsky. So with that, we have come to the end of part 1 of this video series, and we have solved 15 questions from various previous question papers, and we also had a brief overview of Vygotsky's theories and concepts. So I will see you again in the next part, where we will solve 15 more questions from various previous question papers. So till then, take care, stay safe, and see you soon.